Hey everybody, I'm Ron Canner and Shalom from Israel. And I want to welcome you to a very special edition, an election edition. I think we need some special music. Very good. Of Your Israel Connection. We've got elections on April 9th, and I'll get to that in just a minute, but I want you to know that Your Israel Connection is brought to you by Tikkun Global, a worldwide family of messianic leaders, ministries, and congregations, all dedicated to the dual restoration of Israel and the church. Also from Messiah's Mandate, dedicated to raising up leaders for the coming Israeli revival. Hallelujah. Now, let's get to the news. Okay, now as I said, this is a very special edition. We're going to dedicate it to the Israel elections on April 9th, just a few days away. But there's one story I want to share with you because it's kind of funny. April 1st was just a few days ago, and a lot of people like to take that opportunity to tell stories that you may not believe. Tom Brady said he was retiring. Turns out he wasn't. But you know what the Israeli, what office was it? It was our Strategic Affairs Ministry. They went on the Twitter and they said this. Now, first I got to set it up a little bit. You probably, or you might not know who Roger Waters is. He was one of the lead singers for Pink Floyd, very famous rock and roller from Great Britain, and he hates Israel a lot. So whenever any artists come here to perform, he goes on the Twitter or the Facebook, and he's like, don't go to Israel, they're horrible, boycott, divestment, sanctions, yuck, yuck, yuck. He really doesn't like us. In fact, we have there's a Pink Floyd cover band that used to come here, and because of his pressure, they stopped. But then they realized that was stupid, so they came anyways. Anyways, Roger Waters, he read this on Twitter because it was put out by our Strategic Affairs Ministry. It's so funny. It's so good. Pink Floyd legend at Roger Waters is coming to Tel Aviv. Mark your calendars. And you know what? He didn't think it was funny, and I can't tell you exactly what he wrote. Let me just say that he said some very bad words, and then he said, this is no laughing matter. But the Twitter or the Twittersphere disagreed with him and told him to just lighten up. It's a joke. Have fun with it. He would not have any fun with it. Anyways, that's the only real story we're going to get into today other than the elections. So meet me on the other side of this amazing video about an awesome school in Haifa that are changing the lives of young people both inside the congregation and in the neighborhood. See you in a minute.
I believe very much that art and music, it's come from God, so that we introduce kids to something high in land of Israel with Jewish messianic influence. About 9 years ago we started our school, and major idea it was to protect kids from poor families from street.
אז חשבנו לפתוח את זה לאנשים שלא יכולים להרשות לילדים שלהם ללמוד בקונסרבטוריון שכבר קיימים.
Today we have about 120-130 students, kids, and about 80-85 kids. It's from not believers' families. It's a really full format music school. Every child receives private lesson on his profession. It's mean or piano, violin, or flute, or drum, or guitar, or something else. It's also class of theory, and also it's core that kids together develop voice. Kids in our school not study only music, it's also painting lessons, so you can see healthy paint. So you through paint or through music you can hear heart of kids, and you see that it's much more healthy.
אנחנו חושבים שכל ילד הוא צריך לדעת לנגן בכלי נגינה, כי זה עוזר לו בהתפתחות. זה כמו לשון של הנפש.
Very often we make concerts, so for these concerts we invite also their parents. For them it's opportunity to see what happened in congregation and with different styles of our activity. We see in our congregation kids after studying school, they already play music in our worship team, and also from Arabic congregations, from other congregations. They study, they develop their abilities, and they serve. Cost of education, it's about, together with all expenses, it's come to almost $90,000 per year. And we can cover by money that we receive from parents, it's about $40,000. So every year we stay before challenge to cover extra $50,000. But God's help, God's provision, always He find for us somebody to cover extra. You know, many kids come specifically from poor families, but also these aliyah problems, and they have different syndromes. So after a while, even parents tell us, children operate different, something change in them.
יש משהו בילדים שלנו, יש איזשהו שינוי גם באופי, גם בהתנהגות, זה נוגע בלב.
Thank you very much that you help us to reach Israelis through music.
And so April 9th, next week, Tuesday, we are having elections here in Israel. And I have to say that these elections are the first in quite a while that we're not quite sure what's going to happen. We're not quite sure who's going to be the next prime minister. In fact, for me, I would say the last time was 2009. Now, 2009 is a good example to help you understand how Israel works. Because even though that was when Benjamin Netanyahu became prime minister again, he was in 96 through 99, I think, and then he came back in 2009, he did not win that election, or I should say his party, Likud, they did not win the most number of seats in that election. Now, how can that be? How can you have a situation where a party does not get the most amount of seats, and yet they still get to form a government? I'll explain it to you. Israel has what's called the Knesset. The Knesset has 120 seats. Now you have, in this elections, 40 different parties trying to get seats in that election. Now, in order to get seats in the election, you have to get at least 3.25% of the vote, which would be 4 seats. 100 to 120, 3.25 to 4. So 1% or 1.5%, you don't get a seat. You have to get at least enough for 4 seats to have any representation in the Knesset. So in 2009, the Kadima, Tzipi Livni, they had 29 seats, if I'm not mistaken, whereas the Likud had only 28. So you would think, Tzipi Livni, she wins, she gets to form the next government. There was only one problem. She did not have enough partners enough parties that would join her as partners in a coalition to form a government. What do I mean by that? Okay, so let's suppose my party, the really cool, awesome party, we win the most amount of seats. Then the president of Israel, Reuven Rivlin, will come to me and say, Ron, you're a really awesome, cool party. You won the most number of seats. Now, here's what you got to do, is you got to go around to all these other parties who you've just spent the last 4 months saying are the worst human beings on earth. That's the funny part about it, because during the election season, you're fighting each other and you're saying, don't vote for this guy. It's a waste to vote. He's horrible. He'll give the land away, or he's a racist, or really bad stuff. They say really, really bad stuff about each other. And now I got to go around and meet with the leaders of each of these parties and get them to like me again. And the way I do this is by giving them stuff. If you'll come and be a part of my coalition, you can be the foreign minister. You can be the defense minister. You can be the economic minister. You can be over the school system, education minister. And that's how you do it. It's horse trading, bribing, and then once you get 61 seats, that would be just over 50% of the 120 seats, you can then go back to the president and say, we have a coalition. Now, if you only have 61 seats, that's not good, because it means that if any one party, no matter how small or significant they are, decides that they don't want to be in your government, get upset at you, or they find out that you did something behind their back, and or they don't like your policy, or you renege on something that you promised, they can collapse the government like that. And that has happened many times. So you really want your coalition to be 70, 75. I mean, if you can get up to 90, then you're really doing good. And if I remember correctly, it was Netanyahu's coalition back in 2009. No, it was the next one after that. That was one of the largest in the history of Israel, where he had people from all over the political map. However, his last coalition started with just 61 seats. He got it up to 67, and eventually they dissolved the government back in November and called for new elections that we're having now. Okay, so you understand how it works. You win, then you get... Now, what if you can't? What if, because right now what we have is we have the Likud party, and by the way, let me just say this. If you're Israeli and you're watching this, I'm not telling you who to vote for. Legally, I can't do that, and I don't even know who I'm voting for. Now you say, Ron, what do you mean you don't know who you're voting for? It's another thing you got to understand about Israeli election. You might want a larger party to be the group or the party that forms the coalition, but there might be a smaller party that is, say, fighting for, let's suppose there was a party that was fighting for the rights of Messianic Jews, right? And I knew that they weren't going to win the election, but maybe they'll win 4 seats. And maybe those 4 seats will be the last 4 seats to form a coalition, which gives them what we call the king-making power. Then they can go to the winner of the largest party, and he can say, rather the party who wins the most amount of votes, and say, okay, we'll come in your government, but here's what we want. So I might say, even though I want this party to rule, this party really is looking out for me. There was a party a few years ago that ran on the platform of helping young families buy houses. So a lot of people voted for them. Okay, now in our election, so I'm not telling you to vote. I said all that to say I'm not advocating for any candidate. I'm just trying to tell you the facts. How can you pray? Honestly, you need to pray for God's will to be done. Because right now we don't know who's going to win. Right now, let me give a little history. When the government dissolved, Prime Minister Netanyahu was relatively sure that he would be reelected easily, and he would reform a coalition with a stronger mandate and a stronger ability to govern. Also, there were rumors that he was about to be indicted on fraud charges. And so it is thought that one of the reasons that he collapsed his own government is he thought the Attorney General would never recommend indicting him in the middle of an election season. But it appears that the Attorney General said, you can't do that. That's not right. That's not fair. So I am going to recommend that you be indicted. I'm not going to talk about the things that he was indicted for. They have to do with bribery and corruption. I don't know if he's innocent or guilty. Not going there. Tempted, but I am not going there. The fact of the matter is that it kind of backfired on him, because in the middle of the election, he was recommended by the Attorney General to be indicted. That means within the next 9 months or so, there'll be a grand jury hearing, and they'll either bring formal charges against him for corruption or they'll throw out the case. We'll see, but never in the history of Israel a sitting prime minister under indictment. How do you govern a country and deal with it's just, even if you're innocent, it's a sticky situation. Okay, so what happened? There was still nobody that was going to challenge him. There was no party that was able to garner the 30 or so seats that Likud has been expected to win. Until Yair Lapid and his Yesh Atid party and former General Benny Gantz and his Israel Resilience Party teamed up together. Now, they teamed up together just before the indictment against Netanyahu was announced, and then the media polls afterwards had them winning as many as 45 seats, which meant they would have soared to victory, and they worked out an agreement where Gantz would be prime minister for 2.5 years and Lapid for 1.5 years. It took them weeks to come to an agreement because obviously they both want to be prime minister. Now, their party is what I would call a center party. The Likud party is more of a right-wing party. Now, right-wing in Israel, it doesn't mean you're a racist. It means that you are very pro-security. And a center party, I mean, this guy was a general, the chief of staff. You can't, you know, he's not a weak dude. He's a hawk. He's a tough guy. It's very hard. And the number 3 and 4 people in their party are former chiefs of staff. Chief of staff is like the general of the Joint Chiefs. And these are military men who understand security. So it's hard to label them as liberal or leftist, which is what the Likud has tried to do. You can't trust them. They're leftist, they're liberal, they're going to give away, they'll do. And then on the other side, I heard Benny Gantz say the other day, this election is so important, our very democracy depends on it. And see, that makes me not really respect him. Because can't somebody just be honest? Our democracy here in Israel is stronger than any one election, no matter who wins. It's stronger. It's not going to fall apart if Netanyahu wins, and it's not going to fall apart if Gantz wins. Okay, so things have settled down in the past few weeks, and Likud in the last poll has regained its lead over what we call the Kachol Lavan, which sounds beautiful in Hebrew. It's like if you're in America, you hear the words red, white, and blue, but if I just say the blue and white party, doesn't sound so nice. But in Hebrew, Kachol Lavan, oh, very, very nice. It was a good name they chose. And right now, Likud is polling just ahead of them about 30 to 27. Another poll has them 29 to 28. We don't know what's going to happen. Polls are really bad in Israel. Why? Because 20% of the public have no idea who they're going to vote for until April 9th. Isn't that crazy? Let me explain why. You see, I'm using America as the example because that's where I came from. In America, pretty much everyone knows who they're going to vote for when it comes to election day. Why? Because you have 2 choices. Yes, there's some fringe parties that get a little bit of vote, but it's pretty much Republican, Democrat. Here, you have 40 choices. So, and you got to be strategic like I shared earlier. Okay, we're going to finish this in just a minute, but we're going to take a quick commercial break. Okay, friends, I want to ask you to do something real quick. If you're enjoying this, if you're watching on Facebook, would you like this? Would you share it? Leave a comment. Let us know where you're watching from. We love to engage with you. And I want to encourage you to do something. I have a book I've written. It's called The Coming End Time Awakening. People who've read it seem to like it. I enjoyed writing it so much. I learned so much about the coming revival. There is revival coming before Yeshua returns. I want you to read about it, and it only costs you nothing. All you got to do is go to tikkun.tv, click on the book, and then just sign up for our emails, newsletters, and we will send you the book free of charge. That's tikkun.tv. Bless you. Okay, so I'm pretty much done. Let me just give you a little bit more information. So right now, our election is not going to be between the left and the right. It's going to be between the right and the center right. At the end of the day, there may not be much political daylight between Netanyahu and Gantz. We don't really know. Or Gantz may turn out to be very much to the left. Why don't we know? Because he's a newcomer to politics. And you know what's funny? He was really polling high when he wasn't saying anything. And everybody was like, come on, say something. But, you know, he's tall, he's handsome, he was a general, he's stoic looking. And the Bible says even a fool is thought to be wise if he opened not his mouth. And he took that to heart because he wasn't giving interviews, he wasn't giving his position, and it was working for him. But eventually the press began to give him a really hard time. No, we need to kind of know what you believe. And the more he's opened up his mouth, and I don't mean this to be critical of him, anybody in that situation, it's going to happen to, he's fallen in the polls, and his party has fallen in the polls. And again, it doesn't help. This I am critical of, is when you say stupid things like our very democracy depends on this election. You know, you weren't even in politics, Benny, 4 months ago. You know, what if you weren't here to save us? So, you know, and to be fair, Bibi saying similar things, you know, if I'm not reelected, if I'm not leading, the sky's going to fall. You know, they're both kind of think that they need to really be the next prime minister. Okay, so one thing very controversial that happened during this election cycle, there is a party to the far right and they're racist. They're called the Jewish Power Party, and their roots go back to a radical rabbi named Meir Kahane, who was an American immigrant. He was actually assassinated in New York by a Muslim in, I think, 1991, something like that. But his group has lived on, but they're small, not much support. They weren't going to get in the Knesset. But Netanyahu became very concerned that one of his partners, the Jewish Home Party, was losing so much support because their top two people left to form another party, that Jewish Home wasn't going to win any seats. They weren't, remember the threshold, 3.25%? They were going to end up with 2.5 or 3%, and then he would lose 2 or 3 seats. So he got them to merge with this racist party, and he took a lot of flack for that. Now, let me be clear. He didn't do that because he's a racist. Netanyahu is not a racist. He did that because he wants to win, and he wanted to get, more seats on the right block that would help him be the prime minister. Nevertheless, it's a bad look. It does not look good to the rest of the world. Whenever you befriend or help in any way people who are racist, that is not good. You have to trust God more than to do something like that. And I'm kind of sad that he did that. Now, here's the neat thing about that. I've heard people like Roger Waters, remember him having a concert here in Tel Aviv? April Fools. There are people who hate Israel and they say the whole country are racist. Well, you know what? I'm not a racist. Our cameraman behind you is not a racist. Sound man over there, not a racist. The people that were with it earlier, not the very fact that we have a racist fringe party is proof that the country is not racist. You understand? If we're all racist, then you don't have a racist French party. It's like in America, a lot of people are saying, the Republican Party. No, Republican Party isn't racist. How do we know that? Because we still know what the Ku Klux Klan is. We know what white supremacist group are, and they are rejected. Are you with me? So if we're able to identify fringe groups like that, we're not racist. Nevertheless, I don't think it was a good thing to do anything to help this party, and I hope they don't get any seats. We will see. So again, let me just summarize that. On April 9th, we're going to go to vote. There's going to be 120 seats, 40 different parties wanting those seats. You got to get at least 4 seats to be even in the government. And then once you win, you have to put a coalition of at least 61 seats together. How can you pray? Honestly, I'll say it again. You need to ask God to do His will in this country. What this country needs more. Now, I love politics. I watch the news. We do this show every week. But at the end of the day, what this country needs is revival. We need a move of God. We need God to awaken this nation. The Bible says very clearly, God said, I'm going to bring the Jewish people back from every country where I've scattered them. He did that in 1948, miraculously, after 2,000 years of wandering. Never has happened to any other nation in the history of the world where they were separated from their homeland for more than 2 generations, where they remained an identifiable people group. Israel did it for 2,000 years because of God. And we became a nation again. But in that same passage, he says, when I bring you back, I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you will be clean. I will take away your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. God is going to breathe on this nation. That's what we need to be praying for. It's not, is it that leader? Is it this? No, it's God. We need God. And we know that the Bible says, before Yeshua returns, there is going to be an awakening in this country. Revelation 1:7 says, every eye will see him, even those who pierced him, and they will mourn. And that's quoting Zechariah, who said, the days are going to come that I'm going to pour the spirit of grace in supplication on the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and they will look upon me, whom they have pierced. A day is coming when the Jewish people as a whole will see that, yes, Yeshua is the Messiah, and they'll mourn. Yeshua said to the Jews of Jerusalem in Matthew 23, you're not going to see me again until you say, Baruch haba b'shem Adonai. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. In other words, I will not return until the Jews of Jerusalem, like Zechariah said, until you recognize that I'm the Messiah and you welcome me back by saying, Baruch haba b'shem Adonai. That's what we need to really be praying for, okay? So anyways, April 9th, our elections. Thank you for your prayers. Thank you for your intercession. We bless you. Again, like, share, all that good stuff. And I will see you very soon after the elections to tell you what it all means.